The world was once ruled not by nations but by crowns. Long before parliaments and presidents, before the word freedom became the language of the common man, there were thrones carved in stone and gilded in gold that held the fate of millions. In Europe, the crown was not just a symbol of power, it was destiny itself. It began in the echoes of the Dark Ages, when Rome's great empire had fallen and the continent was shrouded in chaos. Out of its ashes rose men who sought not only to survive, but to rule. Their power came not from democracy or wealth, but from blood, faith, and the sword. These were the first kings of Europe, men whose names would echo through time. In the forests of the Franks, a young warrior named Clovis united his people under one banner, one cross, and one crown. In Britain, petty warlords fought for scraps of a fallen world until legends emerged, men like Alfred the Great, who stood against Viking fury. Across the north, the Norsemen, sea-wolves from the frozen lands, carved kingdoms with fire and steel, from the fjords of Norway to the green hills of Ireland. Europe was being forged, kingdom by kingdom, by those strong enough to seize it. But kingship was never born from peace, it was baptized in war. Every crown was won at the edge of a blade. Every empire was built on the bones of the fallen. The medieval world was not a stage of romance and honor, it was a battlefield of ambition. Castles rose like teeth across the land, walls of stone standing against endless tides of invasion. As centuries turned, the cross became the weapon of kings. The church crowned them as God's chosen, granting divine right to rule. From this union of faith and power came an age of conquest unlike any before. The Crusades were not only holy wars, they were empires expanding under the banner of salvation. Knights rode east with shining armor and burning hearts, carrying both the sword and the symbol of the cross. In this era, Europe became a continent of kings, each claiming divine destiny, each hungering for dominion. The Plantagenets of England, the Capetians of France, the Habsburgs of Austria, names that shaped not just borders but history itself. They fought not only for land but for legacy. To rule Europe was to write your name into eternity. Yet power breeds envy, and envy breeds war. Europe became a chessboard of crowns. Brothers turned on brothers. Alliances shattered like glass, and empires rose only to crumble in blood and fire. For every coronation there was a war, for every empire a rebellion. Still, the crown endured. Kings believed themselves chosen by God, and their people, weary of chaos, believed them too. The idea of monarchy became a myth wrapped in gold, a symbol of order in a world of endless conflict. But beneath the grandeur of thrones, the shadow of conquest never faded. From the cold north to the Mediterranean sun, kings dreamed of empire, of dominion over all. It was not enough to rule a kingdom, they sought to rule the world. And so began the great age of empires. The fire of conquest did not fade, it grew. By the dawn of the 15th century, the kings of Europe had become dreamers of dominion. The castles of the Middle Ages gave way to palaces of ambition, where maps were drawn not to understand the world, but to own it. The age of faith had ended. The age of empires had begun. In Spain, a marriage united two crowns, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, and with them, a kingdom was reborn. Under their banner a new idea took shape: God, gold, and glory. They expelled old enemies from their lands, then turned their eyes to the sea. In 1492, when Columbus sailed westward under their flag, he carried not just hope, but the hunger of a continent. The waves would no longer be barriers, they would be roads to empire. Across the Channel, England too began to awaken from centuries of feudal war. The Tudor dynasty, crowned in the blood of civil conflict, built a kingdom ready to expand beyond its island shores. Under Henry VIII, the crown broke from Rome. Under Elizabeth I, it conquered the seas. The English fleet, born from timber and courage, defeated the mighty Spanish Armada, and in that storm, a new empire was born. The age of conquest had reached the oceans. Every ship that sailed from Europe carried two things: the flag of a king and the shadow of ambition. From Portugal's golden age of navigation to the Dutch merchants who painted the seas with commerce, Europe reached out across the globe. Africa, Asia, and the Americas became theaters of royal dreams. But this was not discovery, it was domination. Beneath every crown lay a cost. For every city founded in glory, there were countless lives erased. The march of empire left both splendor and suffering in its wake. Yet to the kings of Europe, conquest was not cruelty, it was destiny. In France, the flame of monarchy burned brighter than ever. Under Louis XIV, the Sun King, France became a kingdom of magnificence and might. Versailles rose from the earth like a dream, marble and mirrors reflecting the divine right of kings. "I am the state," Louis declared, and for a time it was true. His crown shone brighter than any other, and his empire stretched across continents. But the world was changing. Empires, once bound by blood and sword, were now driven by something deeper: commerce, science, and power. The printing press spread knowledge faster than any royal decree. Philosophers began to question divine rule. The Enlightenment whispered ideas that would one day shake the foundations of every throne in Europe. Still, the crowns held firm. They built armies larger than ever, funded by colonies across the seas. Europe became the center of the world, its kings and emperors wielding wealth beyond imagination. The Habsburgs ruled half of the continent through marriage and might. The Tsars of Russia expanded their empire across frozen plains to the Pacific Ocean. The crown had never been heavier, and conquest had never been greater. Yet, even in triumph, the seeds of downfall were being sown. For the people of Europe were beginning to see their kings not as gods but as men, flawed, greedy, and mortal. And when men begin to doubt the divinity of power, revolution is never far behind. From the ashes of old wars, a new storm began to rise, one that no crown could contain.